Good afternoon, this is Sean Golding with Golding & Golding, here to discuss the basics of what do you do if you're an American abroad but you haven't filed taxes. So a major concern for a lot of U.S. citizens and other U.S. persons who reside overseas is, they go on thinking that they don't have to file taxes, which seems normal, right? You don't live in the U.S., why do you got to keep filing tax returns, especially if you don't have any U.S. sourced income? And then, a few years later, 10 years later, you realize or you learn from another expat, or you're online in one rabbit hole researching something different, you come to the conclusion that, yikes, you should have been filing tax returns your entire time. So a few things to keep in mind. First is, who is a U.S. person? So a U.S. person is a U.S. citizen, legal permanent resident, foreign national who meets the substantial presence test. That last category is really not going to impact someone who's been living overseas for a while, but if it's in the first year or two and they've been in the U.S. for more than 31 days in the current year, it could impact them. Another situation to consider is expat versus expatriate, right? If you're a U.S. person and you're just living overseas, you're considered an expat. You're living outside of the U.S. Permanently or semi-permanently, but from a tax perspective, if you haven't formally expatriated yet and relinquished your green card or renounced your citizenship, then guess what? You're still a U.S. person for tax purposes. And one more important thing to keep in mind is how many years of non-compliance, not filing do you have? If it's just a year or two, not a big deal. If it's more than that, it still may not be a big deal if you're an expat, been there for a while, you're filing taxes in the current country you reside, or you're an accidental American. The issue would be if you're a U.S. citizen, you filed for a while, then you abruptly stopped, depending on whether you're in a country where you're being taxed, having money withheld as SAWS could impact everything. So how does it work, right? The U.S. is one of those countries, one of two countries that taxes you on your worldwide income. You're a U.S. person living overseas. It doesn't matter if all of your money is sourced outside of the U.S. If you fall into that category of U.S. person, you're taxed on your worldwide income. There's two main sources of income: earned income and passive income. So earned income, you've got employment, consulting, self-employment, things like that. Passive income, your general culprits are your interest income, capital gains, dividend, and rent. One important thing with rent that we come across a lot: if you have gross income and then you factor in your deductions and you net a loss, that's still income that you have to report, right? The IRS doesn't make it easy. You have to report all the income, the rents you received, and then you have to factor in all the expenses, depreciation, commissions, maintenance, all that good stuff to show that it's negative. Now, even if you have this income, it doesn't mean you're going to owe U.S. tax, okay? You may qualify for the foreign earned income exclusion that also has an housing exclusion component to it. You may qualify for a foreign tax credit, not always dollar for dollar, but should typically reduce the U.S. tax liability significantly. So, important thing to keep in mind. A lot of people think, shoot, I haven't filed, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't even pay tax in this country. But you know what? If you make less than a certain amount, depending on if you have a housing exclusion or not, you may not have any tax liability anyway, depending on the foreign earned income exclusion. And even if you do, even if you're a high income earner, there's a hybrid computation that you use for the foreign earned income exclusion and the foreign tax credit, which could bring it back down to zero. In addition to the worldwide income, you've also got your foreign account and asset compliance. Please do not be fear-mongered or scare-mongered by the ridiculousness that you find online. Most of it is not going to be a big deal, especially if you're living outside the country and you qualify for streamlined foreign, offshore, or expat tax amnesty. We have a separate presentation for that as well. The main reporting requirements are FBAR, Foreign Bank and Financial Account Reporting. It's on FinCEN Form 114. You've got FATCA, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, for individuals and others who file a tax return. What I'm saying is not for the foreign financial institutions, but trust estates, individuals, corporate entities, things like that. It's going to be Form 8938. If you've got some more complicated tax situations, you may have a Form 8621 for passive foreign investment companies, or 3520 or 3520A, depending if you have foreign trusts, foreign gifts, things like that. If you have interest or ownership in certain foreign companies, you may have to file a Form 8938 or a much more complicated form depending on your level of ownership and control. The two main forms are Form 5471, corporations, Form 8865, partnerships. If you've been out of compliance for a while, plenty of safe ways to get back into compliance. If you're willful or just can't certify under penalty of perjury that you're non-willful, you've got the VDP, Voluntary Disclosure Program, which is for both offshore and domestic ever since the IRS got rid of OVDP. You've got streamlined filing domestic and offshore, both for foreign money, just whether you're a U.S. resident or you don't qualify as a foreign resident or not. There's reasonable cause and delinquency procedures, which are alternatives to streamlined if you're non-willful, although as of November 2018, delinquency procedures essentially morphed back into just a plain old reasonable cause statement. We have lots of free information available on our main websites and our sub-websites. You can always reach out and schedule a reduced fee initial consultation if you think it's appropriate. Again, my name is Sean Golding with Golding & Golding. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.